He dreamed of ruling a 1,000-year empire, but in just 12 years, it crumbled to ashes. Adolf Hitler began the Second World War believing he was unstoppable. In his mind, Germany was destined to dominate the world, to erase the shame of World War I, and to build an empire that would last forever. For a time, it seemed his vision might come true. His armies crushed Poland in weeks, rolled over France in days, and humiliated Britain's allies across Europe. The world trembled before the speed and power of the Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War. But behind the thunder of tanks and the roar of bombers, a fatal flaw was already forming: Hitler's belief that he could bend reality to his will. It wasn't military might that doomed him. It was his arrogance. In the early years, every victory seemed to confirm his genius. France fell in 6 weeks, something even the Kaiser had failed to do in World War I. Hitler believed he had outsmarted history itself. But what he didn't understand was that luck and timing had carried him as much as strategy. His enemies were unprepared, divided, and hesitant. Britain stood alone, but even then, the warning signs were clear. When the Luftwaffe failed to crush the Royal Air Force during the Battle of Britain in 1940, Hitler turned away too quickly. He could not stand patience or slow war. He wanted speed, glory, and conquest. So instead of finishing off Britain, he made the most disastrous decision of his life. He turned his eyes east. Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, began on June 22, 1941. It was the largest invasion in history. 3 million German soldiers marching into a land that stretched farther than Hitler's imagination. He believed the Soviet Union would collapse like a house of cards, that his Aryan soldiers would sweep away the inferior Slavs and take the rich oil fields of the East. For a few months, it looked that way. German tanks stormed deep into Russian soil, encircling entire armies and capturing millions of Soviet troops. But Hitler underestimated one thing: Russia itself. The endless land, the merciless winter, the spirit of a people who refused to die. As German soldiers froze outside Moscow with summer uniforms and broken supplies, Hitler refused to let them retreat. His obsession with not yielding an inch cost him entire armies. The Soviets counterattacked, and for the first time the invincible German war machine began to crack. Yet even then, Hitler couldn't accept defeat. He replaced his generals, ignored their advice, and began micromanaging every battle from his bunker. His confidence became delusion. While Germany bled in the snow of the Eastern Front, the world was changing elsewhere. Across the Atlantic, another giant had awakened: the United States of America. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Hitler made another catastrophic error. He declared war on America. It was an emotional move, not a strategic one. He thought the U.S. would be too far, too slow, too distracted to matter. But he had just united the world's 3 most powerful industrial nations, the U.S., the Soviet Union, and the British Empire, against him. The moment America entered the war, the balance of power shifted forever. From 1942 onward, Germany was fighting on too many fronts, against too many enemies, with too few allies. Italy, his partner in fascism, was weak and unprepared. Japan fought its own war in Asia. And inside Germany, the war economy strained under constant Allied bombing. Cities burned, railways shattered, factories were destroyed faster than they could be rebuilt. But Hitler's pride blinded him. He refused to focus resources on defense. He poured everything into grand offensives that drained men and machines. The turning point came at Stalingrad. the city on the Volga River became the graveyard of Hitler's dreams. He sent hundreds of thousands of soldiers into a brutal urban war, house by house, street by street, to take a city that bore Stalin's name. He saw it as a matter of prestige, not strategy. His generals begged him to retreat when the Soviet counterattack encircled the Sixth Army, but Hitler's answer was simple: no step back. He promised supplies that never came. He promised rescue that never arrived. And in February 1943, the German Sixth Army surrendered, the first major defeat of Hitler's empire. From that moment, the tide of war turned. The Soviets began to push westward. The British and Americans landed in North Africa, then in Italy. The Luftwaffe lost control of the skies. German cities became targets for firestorms: Hamburg, Cologne, Dresden. Every night the sky glowed red as Allied bombers turned entire neighborhoods into rubble. But in his bunker, Hitler spoke of miracle weapons, jet planes, rockets, and supertanks that would save the Reich. But these were fantasies born from desperation. The truth was simple: Germany was running out of time, oil, and men. By 1944, Hitler faced the nightmare he had feared most: a war on two fronts. When the Allies landed in Normandy on D-Day, the Reich's fate was sealed. Within weeks, France was liberated. The Western Allies closed in from one side, the Soviets from the other. Still, Hitler refused to surrender. He ordered doomed counterattacks like the Battle of the Bulge, his last gamble in the West. It failed, leaving Germany completely exposed. But his downfall wasn't only on the battlefield, it was in his own mind. Hitler's biggest enemy was reality. He surrounded himself with yes-men who echoed his fantasies. Anyone who disagreed was dismissed or executed. He no longer trusted his generals, his ministers, or even his closest allies. He believed that loyalty and faith could replace fuel and ammunition. His paranoia grew. He blamed everyone but himself: the weather, his officers, even the German people. When the war turned hopeless, he said the nation did not deserve to survive. It was no longer about victory, it was about dragging the world down with him. Meanwhile, his enemies worked together with patience and precision. The Allies coordinated massive invasions, shared intelligence, and built overwhelming industrial power. The U.S. produced tanks, planes, and weapons faster than Germany could destroy them. The Soviet Union, once on the verge of collapse, now had millions of soldiers marching toward Berlin. The machine Hitler built to dominate Europe was now surrounded, collapsing under its own weight. By early 1945, the Third Reich was a dying monster. Soviet artillery pounded Berlin day and night. Streets turned into battlefields. Civilians starved. The dream of the thousand-year empire had lasted only 12 years. Hitler, once the master of Europe, now hid underground in his bunker, a ghost of the man who once promised glory. His voice, once roaring in front of millions, had become trembling and bitter. He raged at maps that no longer mattered, moved divisions that no longer existed. As the Red Army closed in, Hitler's world fell apart. Mussolini was captured and executed by his own people. His generals surrendered or were captured. His empire was gone, his people broken. Still, he refused to face reality. He spoke of phantom armies, of betrayal, of revenge that would never come. On April 30th, 1945, as Soviet soldiers entered Berlin, Hitler made his final decision. In the cold concrete walls of his bunker, he took his own life beside Eva Braun. The man who once promised to lead Germany to eternal greatness ended his life in defeat and ruin. The war did not end that day, but his dream did. In the days that followed, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The cities lay in ruins, millions were dead, and Europe was divided between East and West. The world saw the full horror of his rule, the concentration camps, the Holocaust, the cruelty that had been hidden behind his speeches. Hitler's empire, built on hate and fear, collapsed because hate and fear cannot build, they only destroy. So, why did Adolf Hitler lose World War II? The answer lies not in the number of tanks or soldiers, but in the nature of his vision. His ambition was limitless, but his understanding was not. He mistook terror for loyalty, faith for strength, and ideology for truth. He underestimated his enemies and overestimated himself.
He believed that willpower could conquer weather, geography, and logic. In the end, his empire was built not on stone, but on lies. And when the truth came, it shattered. The real tragedy is that millions suffered for one man's delusion. Hitler's downfall was written in his rise. The same arrogance that led him to power led him to ruin. His victories blinded him, his pride destroyed him, and his hatred consumed everything, including himself. History remembers him not as the master of the world he dreamed to be, but as a warning of what happens when power goes unchecked and lies are mistaken for destiny. And so, from the rubble of Berlin, one truth remains. Empires built on hate may rise fast, but they always fall faster.